Alright, so look. Valentine's Day is a bullshit corporate holiday that doesn't really matter much unless you feel like picking out a day to do something special with your significant other. I acknowledge this, however, I just so happen to be someone who really likes romance stories. So why not take advantage of the occasion for a fun little themed month? That's right. I'm hereby christening the month of February as Romance Roulette. For the next 28 days, I'm going to be making videos exclusively about romance stories. Or just anything related to romance, really. Also, I recognize I'm below zealous when it comes to YouTube credibility, but if any of you lovely viewers feel inspired to create a similar video, just email it to me at mediocre1productions@gmail.com, and I'll add it to the playlist. Anyway, now that I'm done with the self-promotion, let's get this started. Citrus can be a very off-putting story, for a lot of super valid reasons. It's a gay romance, but it oftentimes feels like it's marketed more towards hetero folks with a hard-on for girls kissing. The fact that Mei and Yuzu are step-siblings adds a wholly unnecessary and uncomfortable element to this story for no real reason. But, if you're willing to look past or otherwise excuse those glaring issues, there's actually a really well-told story here, and I hope to shine a light on that today. My name is Low-Key Productions, and I'm here to tell you why Citrus is better than you think. Alright, we all know any great romance story has to grab its audience by introducing them to a pair of compelling protagonists, so it's a good thing Citrus provides that and more. Basically every scene spent with Yuzu before her initial meeting with Mei does an excellent job of endearing her to the audience. The opening scene shows us why Yuzu would want to pursue a relationship, and how doing so might improve her, and the next 6 odd minutes of screen time gives us a window into her life and the kind of person she is. There's an undeniably casual and comfortable tone to these scenes, so when Mei enters the narrative and shakes up Yuzu's whole world, it's easy to find yourself relating with her, especially as she tries her best to adapt to these new challenges. I mean, that's how I felt anyway. I'll admit this is more personal preference than critical analysis, but I find Yuzu a breath of fresh air when it comes to romance protagonists. A lot of romance stories, especially those marketed towards young adults, all tend to feature a story about a shy, introverted, or otherwise outcast person with a good heart falling for a confident, popular person who's so out of their league. That's not inherently a bad thing, but variety is the spice of life, and seeing a protagonist with a goddamn backbone and a healthy amount of self-confidence is so refreshing. Honestly, Yuzu's kind of a badass. She can be indecisive, sure, especially when it comes to her relationship with Mei, but the second she knows what she needs to do, she goes for it, 100%. Even early in the story, after Mei's done nothing but anger and confuse her, she doesn't hesitate to stand up for Mei when their grandfather comes down on her. She's introduced to us as someone who has practically no experience when it comes to love, so it makes sense that she doesn't really know how to react to Mei's advances, especially considering she never realized she was a lesbian. The second she knows what she wants from her relationship with Mei, however, she immediately starts doing everything she can to endear herself to the other woman, and later on, when she recognizes that Mei needs a supportive family more than a supportive lover, she pushes her feelings to the side and tries to be the best sister she can. Later on, when Mei's waffling about in regards to her father, Yuzu takes it upon herself to reconcile the two of them. At the end of the day, she's just someone who wants the best for her loved ones, and does everything she can to make them happy, and that's seriously admirable. Mei, on the other hand, is kind of a bitch, honestly. At the start of the story, she completely rebuffs Yuzu's efforts to better understand her and get along. She repeatedly uses Yuzu's attraction for her to try and manipulate her, then totally shuts her out when Yuzu tries to make a move of her own, which is especially fucked up when you consider she's the person who awakened Yuzu's homosexuality. She's also, if the fact she considers making out with someone to be the most effective manner of shutting them up when they initiate an uncomfortable conversation, deeply fucking repressed. And that's kind of the thing. Mei's a bitch, no doubt about it, but she's not a bitch for no reason, and Citrus doesn't attempt to excuse her shitty actions. Her first forced kiss on Yuzu is shot like a scene from a horror movie. There's this haunting orchestral score underlying the whole thing, and the shots are deliberately invasive and foreboding. This is an uncomfortable moment we're being witness to, and we're not meant to see it as anything romantic. Honestly, throughout the first 4 or so episodes of Citrus, Mei exists as a purely antagonistic force in Yuzu's life. From shaking up her home life to getting her expelled from school because of a misunderstanding she caused, she doesn't do a whole lot to endear herself to Yuzu or the audience. As the story continues to explore her character, however, her, we come to understand her better. And while it doesn't do anything to excuse her earlier actions, it makes them understandable. For Mei, change is a kind of betrayal. This is primarily explored through her father. As one might expect from this kind of story, she grew up in a very stifling household that always demanded excellence from her, and she could deal with that, but only so long as the image she had of her father remained true, that of a strict and diligent man who put everything into his responsibilities. If that changed, then it'd mean all the work she was putting in was effectively worthless. So in the end, all that fear leaves her with is a bunch of unopened letters and an extremely fragile sense of purpose. One which is shattered when her father returns a completely different person and her every fear is realized. That change was a betrayal of everything she held dear. But that's just her interpretation, you know? As Yuzu interacts with Mei's father, and we learn more about him by proxy, it quickly becomes apparent that he's still the same person who puts his responsibilities first. But he's learned that sometimes, changing who you are is the most responsible action you can take.
There is no right path to take in life. You can't see it till you've already traveled down it.
And hell, Yuzu's kind of the epitome of that line of thinking. Here's someone who's primarily concerned with taking full advantage of her youth, a total contrast to Mei's rigidness. But in that difference lies a kind of flexibility that allows her to adapt and overcome the challenges in her life. And it's something Mei learns by the end of this small arc. In her own words,
I was mature enough to understand what my dad was telling me, and the reason he had to leave.
And then Matsuri is introduced, and shakes things up once again. This time, however, in a clever little bit of a narrative symmetry, it's Mei whose life gets shaken up. After the whole thing with her dad is resolved, Mei attempts to settle things with Yuzu by cementing their relationship as sisters, and not lovers. Jesus Christ, this is not an easy show to talk about. Anyway, Matsuri's presence kind of serves as a wake-up call for Mei. This is gonna sound more fucked up than I mean it to, but Mei always thought she was the one in control of the relationship between her and Yuzu. Specifically in the sense that she was the one who had her feelings properly sorted out. But Matsuri's advances make it very clear that she's full of shit. She's just as invested in Yuzu as Yuzu is in Mei, so Matsuri makes her feel threatened in a way she never has before. Despite how different their characterization is, these two characters reflect each other very explicitly. They're both desperate to find someone who loves them, yet simultaneously can't help themselves from believing they're undeserving of love. So once the conflict between them is settled and a lesson is learned, Mei has matured to the point where she is ready to share everything with Yuzu and seriously pursue a relationship with her. But Yuzu can't stop herself from flinching, and it nearly destroys their relationship. What follows is 3 episodes of absolute will they won't they hell, as Yuzu basically makes every wrong choice possible. I don't mean that as a negative, by the way, despite my harsh wording. This section of the story is painful to watch in a I feel like I'm there sort of way, or at least that's how I felt. Yuzu is the only person Mei's ever been truly vulnerable with, so when she trusted her with everything and was turned away, it hurt. Even though I don't believe Yuzu's actions were wrong, if she's gonna have a relationship with Mei, then she needs to actually commit. Yuzu's greatest flaw has always been her indecisiveness, and that's what this 3-episode stress forces her to confront and overcome. Multiple times, she attempts to sell her relationship with Mei, and each time she fails because of her hesitation. Words left unsaid or clumsily delivered, actions taken at inappropriate times, that sort of thing. It gets to a point where it feels as though their prospective relationship is dead in the water. But that's exactly why it's so important now that nothing is left unsaid. And by some miracle, it works. Yuzu overcomes her hesitation regarding her feelings for Mei, and it results in the two of them reaching an understanding and finally getting together. That's the core of Citrus as far as I'm concerned. The thing that makes me enjoy it despite all the missteps it takes. Ultimately, Citrus is a show that shows us how hard it can be to figure out your feelings for someone, especially if they're feelings a lot of people would consider taboo. But once you're sure you love someone else, you've gotta go for it. Maybe it'll go wrong, maybe you'll lose something you care about in the process, but there's just as much a chance things go how you're hoping they will. You've gotta take the leap, even if they're your step-sibling. No, I'm fucking joking. Regardless, if that's an idea that connects with you, and you're willing to excuse the uncomfortable elements in its premise, maybe Citrus is something that will connect with you too.